2.
It's so good to see some of the names and faces here. Really lovely. The sense I'm getting is of such a strong community developing. And together, you know that we can do more than alone.
Always.
Yeah, it's very interesting who is connecting from which place and the city. Please share in the chat where you are.
Nirala, lovely to see you. And Faith, Hugh, and
Angela's joining from Cape Town. So it is 6 o'clock here for me in Cape Town, but we're just going to give it a few more minutes, allow people some time to arrive before we get started in earnest. So while we all just take this moment to settle and to wait for everyone, as Anton asked, this would be a good place to maybe ask you to say where you're joining from. I know Dumi says he's joining from Earth. Thanks for that, Dumi. But maybe you can be a tad more specific about where you're joining us from. Nirala's joining from Pretoria. Good to have you, Nirala.
Hi, I'm joining from Johannesburg.
Good to have you, Sesh. Thank you. I see Jerome is also joining from Midrand and Joburg. We've got a strong South African contingent in today, which is lovely. Delphine joining from Joburg. We have Ronnie joining from Uganda. That's great. Lauren from Durban. Lindelo joining from Pretoria. Good to have you all with us. Emmanuel joining from Harare. Welcome.
You say it so nicely.
Harare.
Yeah.
Yuri is joining from Italy. Hi, Yuri. And Refilo from Pretoria.
I think Elke's in Germany.
We have Veronique joining from Lone Hill in Joburg. Hi, Veronique.
Fabulous to see you here. Nice.
Faith, hello. She's also joining us from Midrand and Joburg. Hi, Faith. Isabel's joining from Botswana.
Isabel, how wonderful.
You're so welcome, no worries. Many of us are juggling children and family responsibilities at the same time, so do whatever you need to do to be comfortable, Isabel. Thank you so much for making the effort to join. It's good to have you. And there will be an opportunity to join your voice into the conversation, and the chat is available. So if you can't unmute and talk, the chat is going to be open for you to add your reflections as well, Isabel, if you want to engage further. No problem.
Thank you, Nuni. It was a little bit loud just now. She makes herself heard.
As she should, no worries. And Nogwanda is joining from the Eastern Cape, Uqumbu. Good to have you, Nogwanda. So good to see so many of your names and to see where you're joining us from. I think we have a fairly full program this evening. We're together for 90 minutes altogether, but I would like to leave 10 minutes at the end where the CEO of the Global Mayors Academy, Ferial Puren, will come in and just give you some more information and detail about the Academy and about the program itself. So I'm going to try and manage our time well, that we get to cover everything but still leave some time for her. So people are going to join the conversation as we go on. You're welcome. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us and to think with us tonight. We are meeting for the second time today. We all came together last week for the first time to launch the GMA and for you to meet and to hear a little bit from the people who've been holding this project from the very beginning, and people who've been working tirelessly in the background to put it together, and for you to just hear a little bit more about what the Academy is about and what you can expect from the program itself. So going forward, the program launches in July on the 25th. But between now and the 25th of July, we will be meeting bi-monthly to just deepen community and think together more deeply around some of the themes and topics that will run through the program itself. So this is one of those engagements where we'll get to think a little bit more deeply together. The format of this evening is going to take that of an interview with two people who are also faculty on the program. But it's really important to me that we hear from your voices as well. Yes, we have people with deep experience, but I would love to hear from some of you, your reflections on what you've heard, on what you're experiencing in your spaces that you're working with and in just the cities that you live in. So before we jump in earnest, I think it's good to just cover a little bit of housekeeping up front. As I mentioned, there'll be an opportunity to bring your voice to the conversation. Please keep yourself muted until you are ready to answer a question or give a reflection. Then you can raise your digital hand, I'll call on you, and you can bring your voice into the conversation. If you'd prefer, you can also leave your comment or your reflection in the chat, and we'll pick it up there and bring it into the conversation. But your voices, your offerings are incredibly important, so please make sure you bring those in as well. We are, like I mentioned, we are going to have two faculty members with us this evening who are going to deepen this conversation, and I'll be introducing them to you shortly. And I think, yeah, this is a good time to move on to the meat of what we're going to be discussing this evening. So the central question that we're thinking about together tonight is, what does the inner life of a leader have to do with what a city becomes? And this is what we're going to think through more deeply together. But we also have two experts with us. I'd like to introduce Dr. Paddy Pampallis. Paddy holds one of the world's first doctorates in executive coaching. She's the founder and CEO of the Integral Africa Institute and the Coaching Center, and she serves as faculty at the University of Cape Town, the Meridian University, and the Da Vinci Institute. At the Academy at GMA, she is the program architect and lead faculty, designing the developmental architecture that ensures inner leadership capacity evolves alongside the complexity city leaders are called to steward. Her core conviction is the quality of our cities emerges from the maturity of the consciousness shaping them. So maybe you can just unmute and say hi, Paddy, so we can all see you.
Hello, everyone. And yeah, I think to just land the fact that cities are the living systems of our worlds for those of us who live in them, and how important this is.
Thanks so much, Paddy. I'd also like to introduce you to Shanaaz Majiet. Shanaaz is a seasoned board chair, a non-executive director, and an executive master coach with over 3 decades of experience across government, NGO, and corporate sectors. A Salzburg Global Fellow and contributor to the Global Leadership Networks, she is known for integrity, for foresight, and her commitment to ethical and inclusive governance. At GMA, she serves as elective topic designer, ambassador for South Africa, and faculty contributor. leading the topic on the leadership capacities required for the next generation's city leadership. Her work focuses on developing the inner and rational capacities that enable leaders to govern with both competence and depth of character. So you can hear from that these are two people who are perfectly positioned to think with us around this topic of a leader's inner world. But before we jump into the conversation with Paddy and with Shanaaz, I'd like to start with bringing your voices in. And I'd like you to reflect on this question. Think about your neighborhood, the suburb you live in, the city you live in. And think about the life that you lead as you navigate your way through the city every day. And finish this sentence. The city I care about needs. The city I care about needs. Please add your reflection to the chat, or otherwise raise your hand and I'd love to hear your voice and bring you in. Veronique says, the city I care about needs safety and infrastructure we can count on. I'm sure many people feel that. Ferial says, the city I care about needs people to come out of isolation and reconnect with one another on a human level. Nirala says, the city I care about needs sustainable leadership. From Paddy, the city she cares about needs all of us citizens to be actively engaged with the city. Daryl adds homes for the homeless. Many of us could concur with that. Aarti, joining from India, says the city I care about needs calming down and noise reduction. Jerome adds safety and ethical leaders. Ronnie adds the city I care about needs awareness and total mind transformation. And Olga, yes, we met last week, Olga, she adds conversation with its citizens. That's critical. Ferial, you have a hand up?
Well, I just wanted to respond, Ndoni, to your question in person, and that was that I live between two cities. I live sometimes in South Africa, in Cape Town, and there I see different issues. And I live in most of the time in Scotland, in a town called Dalgety Bay. But I think that my town in Scotland, there is lots of things here that I love because it's safe, it's very beautiful, it has lots of great infrastructure, but then I see how human beings are we're very pleasant, but we don't reach each other on that human level, that deep connection, that Ubuntu type stuff we talk about in South Africa, right? And so I see this as something that's really missing here, and I can see the yearning of human beings for that. And then on the other hand, in Cape Town, I experience the Ubuntu of it all. But I also see how infrastructure, how other aspects of development that humans are also calling and crying for, and how it's affecting their lives very severely in the way that, we can live it in safety and lots of aspects like that. So yes, that's what I see as needs. Thank you, Ndoni.
Thank you for that, Ferial. And I see that what you're mentioning is echoed in so many of the comments, and this idea of the humanity and humane leadership is coming through so often. And Lauren here speaks about the city needing transformational leadership. Sesh says that the city needs more humane leadership. Nogwanda mentions compassion. So it'll be interesting to look at, how does one cultivate the capacity for these things within leaders, which is what we'll be touching on today. Dumi says accountability and humaneness by all public officials and business leaders. So many common themes of what we feel is most needed in our cities that are across the world from one another coming through. And Robert says it needs to wake up from routine and comfort focusing to curiosity about shaping the future. So individuals, I'm sure citizens as well as leaders, engaging more curiosity and imagination around shaping the future. Lauren says less politicking, and Dave, to know the small part I play is valued and needed. That's so important for a continued engagement, to feel like your voice matters and is heard. Veronique, accountability and non-violent compassion, open and collaborative conversations. So we're hearing what's coming from the room, Paddy, and you work with leaders at all levels, right? And I'm curious, through your work, what insight have you gotten around what happens inside of a leader when the city is in crisis? And this is crisis in the city, you know, the council chambers on the executive levels, or crisis in the streets among the citizens. What do you get to see working with those leaders that we may not?
Sure. I've just been taken aback by the engagement on the chat and this thinking about where are we in the cities and who are we and how are we working in, with, on, alongside the city. You know, what kind of role do we have, or do we see it as something that is separate and is something out there that is somebody else's responsibility? So I'm really full of working with the leadership maturity processes. Hugh has been with me today, and one or two others in the group here have been on the journey of what does it mean to be a mature leader, and how do we work with the leadership pathway as it goes through and through its adult development, through its journey from gaining knowledge and skills, because there's a trajectory that we all go through. You know, we get into university and we want to become something, we become something, we want to show how important that is. We then join an organization, we either commit into an organization, whether that's the city or another organization, and we become part of that. And then there's this, how do we act within the organization here, the city? How do I, who've trained, you know, through the university and something has been, or through experience or through a skill, come into being and into relationship with the city that I live in, and how do I see it? And, you know, in the early stages of our development, we see the city as outside of us, having to serve us, having to be something that is an object outside of us. It should work. They should be doing it. Who is the leadership? Who is the mayor? How do leaders manage this? And then if something goes wrong, oh, for sure, we know where to blame. But actually, the call that I think we're asking is that we can no longer point to leadership in the hierarchical aspect of it being something out there that is separate from ourselves. It is us. The system, the city is us. So those of you who, and I think a lot of you are familiar with systems thinking, when we think of a system, a living system, I as an individual am a living system. Who I work with and my team and my group, we form a living system and we're in relationship with that. When I am in the city is not an outside artifact of a system, a process, sanitation, pipes, electricity. It is made up of living human beings, small units of living systems that are trying to come together to coalesce around some served and combined purpose, and that is to make the city great or to make the city good. I'm always nervous when I say make something great again, because that's such a universal, non-inspiring thing. But when I say great, I mean responsive, responsible, engaged. That the problem is not out there. The problem is a responsibility of each of us. So the experience that I've had of city leaders and leaders who are working on the edges of the city, working in health, working in education, working in the NGOs, working in organizations and in business. And I'm humbled actually at the extent of experience of me being part of the lives of so many of these leaders. What happens when the noise outside overwhelms what is inside? That moment when a leader recognizes that actually there are so many demands on me, there's so much that is reliant on me, there is so much that has to be done. What happens in that moment of realization? And the work with leaders is to help them manage those tensions, manage what they can take on for themselves, what they can delegate. Speaking to a leader yesterday, I was actually so drawn by the way that an over responsibility was taken on into the individual as having to please and get things sorted out. And part of our discussion was, what a burden that you feel you have to do this alone. Who do you turn to? Who are the people that you can call on? Where do you allow yourself to rest in? A couple of days ago, working with another leader, I had him burst into tears. Yes, tears. And then having to deal with, oh my gosh, this is something I should not have done. But I actually hate the pressure. I absolutely detest the pressure. And under that pressure, we have to ask as interveners, what does that leader need at that moment? Is it structural? Is it systemic? Is it relational? Is it the interior capacity? And if we come to realize that all leaders go through a journey, and if they're supported really beautifully, that journey can help them expand their capacity to manage complexity. If they feel alone from early on, imagine somebody who's had an experience as a child of having to manage so many processes. For those not so much in the more the countries where there is perhaps even higher tax to support the social needs of people, where the wealth of the city has been what we would call a first world city, but I put that in inverted commas because first world in certain things, maybe not in other things. And in the structural systems of our own South African context, where people, or African context, I might even say, where there is a collective struggle of reclaiming identity and reclaiming the offering of what we have that is inherent in the peoples here to show up in their leadership role. So there are lots of complexities around the culture, around the timing, around the size of the organization or the city, but that loneliness that goes inside when I feel I am on my own and there's nobody out there. I heard David, you mentioning my little part. You didn't say my little part being valuable. Is the part that I play valuable to the city? Is your helping the city realize that water comes into your road, that floods you every time there is some weather, storm, climate expanse? Who is the leader that has to work with it, and what is our response to the person working with that challenge? So not to see the city as something out there, but to see that every interaction we have can actually shift the internal dimension of the people who formerly work in the city. I think I'll leave that there for Shanaaz to maybe come in.
That just before we do, I mean, there's so much that you said there, and luckily I think we're going to pull some of those threads as we go deeper in the conversation. You mentioned leadership maturity framework, and that's something we will be building on later on. But I think what you said that implicates all of us and doesn't just point the finger at leaders, that's saying we are essential partners in the working, the health, the thriving of our cities. I think that's really important. And also that, sharing the story of that city leader that was talking about hating the pressure, and that it really reminds one that within these systems, there are human beings having very, very real experiences. So that kind of really brings that front of mind. Shanaaz, I'd like to
and
bring
Donnie,
you
just before you bring Shanaaz in, to just
Sure.
say that part of the GMA, the Global City and the Global Cities Leadership Program, is being motivated and being inspired by what I've just shared around how do we as communities support our leaders in the city. So that's one of the impulses.
Thank you. And to bring you in, Shanaaz, maybe we can just deepen that idea of support for leaders. So this is something that we talk about a lot, but what kind of support do you believe through your work with leaders, what kind of support do you think that they're lacking, that they don't have access to? And what is it that in our various cities, what are we losing because of that lack of support for leaders?
Ndoni, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you. And Dolores and everyone else that's written in the chat. Dolores, I particularly want to pick on what you brought into the room, the word love. I so appreciate that. I think everything that informs my work and coming to answering your question, Ndoni, is at the intersection of love and power, how leaders work with that, their access to it. So talking about support, right? So if we're talking about support in the context of crisis, and we've got different kinds of crisis. Our governance in South Africa at this time is in a state of crisis. Our world is in a state of crisis. And for me, the kind of support that we need to rally for leaders now are support of a very particular type, of a very special type, right? And it's for us to understand the anatomy of crises, right? And, there are different waves to crises. And we need to locate the right kind of support to leaders in working with crises of various kinds of complexity. And what I see, it's about moments before the crisis reveals itself and it breaks. And it's about what are the capabilities that need to be in place, what are the relationships and the culture that need to be in place. And I think the short answer is leaders need sanctuary. That is a place of support where they can go and find that the spotlight is not going to give them the kind of spaces that they can go into and go and be vulnerable and go and deal with the onslaught of the complexity and the crisis. I think, when crisis breaks and the waves of crisis present itself and all the turbulence that goes with it. So there are various capacities that the individual leader need, and how do we support that? And I think support, if I reflect on my own experience within government, working with National Treasury and the City Support Program that's been well established for many years, it's a kind of support that provides technical support. And increasingly, we've shifted that to saying, what is the leadership support that's required for building the kind of capacities that we need so that we can recover from crisis, right? So that we can learn from crisis, so that we can rebuild and release and innovate and look at, how do we prepare for the next crisis? So I appreciate the work of scholars and practitioners like Peter Willers and Gareth Morgan that have written about how do we become good at crisis, because there's a particular skill set that we need. And that is part of the work of getting leaders to ramp up to, right? And step into crisis more confidently, and getting the organizations ready for navigating culture, complexity and crisis in ways that's going to be more everyday and not the occasional crisis. Let me pause there, Ndoni.
Thank you so much for that. I love that. And Jerome picked it up in the chat as well. Leaders need sanctuary. I think that's a really great one to remember. You touched on the fact that we have multiple crises. And this is, the three of us are in South Africa, but we have people joining on the call from all over the world. And this is something that is happening in all corners, right? There is no one who has escaped this right now. So we have multiple overlapping crises that people are experiencing. We have crumbling infrastructure. I heard earlier today that there's a huge pothole problem in Los Angeles. Coming from Johannesburg, I know a pothole problem. I never imagined that Los Angeles, California, fourth biggest economy in the world, would have a pothole problem. But these are things that we're all experiencing in our different, corners of the world. And when you have those kinds of quote unquote real challenges, right, hardcore challenges that you have to deal with, people then tend to focus on those the technical capacity and all of that to meet those challenges. There's an urgency around that, as you said, Shanaaz. So how do we spotlight and put in the center of the conversation the leaders' inner world? Because I'm sure a lot of people would say that's not significant. That's less important. Those are things you can get to at some point. What would you say to someone who said that?
Yeah. So you want me to go on that, Ndoni, or you want
Go for
Paddy?
it, Shanaaz.
Sure.
Please, you can go for that, Shanaaz, and please add on to it, Paddy, if there's anything else you would like to add as
Great.
well.
So we need to keep leaders sane in this context, right? Because the demands and the reality of crumbling infrastructure and unhappy residents, unhappy employees, shortage of resources. So here's a take that I have, and from the inspiration from our own stories pre-liberation. So we need to work from a place of being practical and the miracles. And that's the intersection of my everyday context, right? So this is what the practical and the miracle looks like, right? So the practical is we need to pray for a band of angels to come and help us survive the context. And we need the miracle that we need to demonstrate and manifest is we need to do it together. That is the paradox of the practical and the miracle. So that our complaints alone is not going to shift the status quo. So the very potholes that's in my community that I am relentlessly complaining about, what my city is not doing and how my taxpayers' money is going in all sorts of wrong places. It's about, if we're coming from a paradigm of this is my city, how do I reclaim my power and my agency? And what the Global Academy is trying to activate more, right? And how do we engage in a partnership? And here's the thing, we're going to need to understand a very different kind of collaboration with our cities. It's no longer the conventional kind of collaboration and thinking about partnerships. We're going to need to think about stretch collaboration. We're going to need to collaborate in new forms. We're going to need to form new kinds of coalitions in order to tilt the cities that we want.
Oh, thank you for that. Stretch collaboration.
I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in. Absolutely spot on. So, what are the stretch collaborations? And do the leaders have the capacity for that stretch? We cannot try and get stretch. We cannot change the systems if we cannot change the way we think about the system. So let's just think of the research being done on the sustainability goals in the world. It was found that beautiful ideas, beautiful structures, beautiful systems, processes, policies, procedures set up, beautiful ideals, which we all believe in. But there's something about the activation of the individual and the collaboration of leaders together that has not yet taken. We have not yet, as part of the Living Cities Earth and Global Academy and all of us kind of think about, even in Intra Africa, it's around how do we human world together? How do we do this thing of humaning a little bit better when we have never ever had any kind of conversation in education right from the beginning? And I know there are people who are working in the realm of education as per se, but what are we educating? Are we helping learning take place at the level of excitement, of curiosity, of engagement, or of fear? Are we having learning take place where we are okay to not know and we are okay to hand out our hand to someone else and say, I actually need help in this? So the collaborativeness is a next stage to actually, I have to feel secure in myself to be able to collaborate. I need to know who I am at some level. Not in an egoic sense, which often happens in leadership because the drive is to be the expert, to achieve, to meet the goals, to meet the physical and the, so many houses by this stage, so much water sanitation, so many roads, never mind corruption that is happening worldwide. We go back to something very primary, which is early education, to the family systems, to the systems that are supporting the city. So it isn't a simple task, this. We are talking about huge complexity. And in that complexity, we are asking, can each person who's holding a very particular part of this, like each one in this room, can we say, I'm not in competition with you. I have got a little bit to add to this whole picture. And if I bring what I have add, how does that coalesce and work with you? How do we partner to understand the vision, not to go into the early competitiveness of first I have to build an identity? So understanding the psychology of leadership is really useful. When we are working with leadership development through different stages of dependence, so let's just take them into 3 stages. And Dolores, I'll come to you now. With the early stage of leaders is, please show me the way. I am dependent on the outside world to help me navigate the way. And when I'm in that dependence phase, that means I need help, I need skills, I need to be shown the way. I am not yet able to activate my self-authoring capacity. And my self-authoring capacity is a later stage capacity where I can take my independent mind into action because I'm not that scared of failing. Because if I am in the dependent space, in my socialized space, if I've got to belong, I need the job, I have to make everybody happy, I can't challenge the system. If that is the culture of the system, then nobody can put their hand up to say, actually, I need help, I don't know. In the independent stage, when we are more able to take that decision making, and that requires a bit more maturity and a bit more internal work of saying, actually, I don't mind if people don't agree with me. How do I advocate for my ideas, not in a violent communication, but in a non-violent way? I saw somebody use that terminology, so I'm bringing you in of how much that is important. But that is a part of another big picture, which is, how do I work with this independence, not to go too far independently and come to what is still very difficult, that interdependent being, that we are interdependent on each other. Now, that is a later stage capacity to actually ask of people to take action from. And that, when we recognize the leadership development journey, is something of, let's start with the early socialized mind. Let's build the structures in the organization or the city that supports that to take on more, that supports that to take on more, that helps with the complexity and continues to grow that field. Then we can talk. Then we can get into the room and converse with each other. Dolores, what contribution have you got here?
Sure. Yeah, I must say I'm listening to both of you, Shanaaz and Paddy, and you know, we're talking about a society, and for that matter, we're talking about a global society. And for me I'm asking the question, where do we begin? You know, it's always good to begin within, to begin with us, right? So for me, it's almost like we need to begin to locate ourselves first, so that before we say leaders should, we are those leaders. We are those leaders. We are stepping into this society, right? And before we see the infrastructure that's not working, before we see the schools that are not working, whatever is not working, which is quite a lot, unfortunately, it's almost to take a step back and say, before it became this, what was it? You know? And that's why I always like to start from a place of love, because I believe that love is a fundamental, universal, global starting point. Because if I'm a leader and I'm in a position where I can wake up in the morning and see and walk across and see a child barefoot in the winter, and my life just goes on, where is my fundamental love for society? Right? And that's where, for me, it actually starts. The people that are in positions of power in government right now started somewhere. They are who they are, and they're doing what they're doing because of who they are, what they bring. Yeah? For somebody to take 250 billion and want to own that amount of money, what is the psychology around there? Something is driving a person to behave and act that way. So for us to be able to get to where things are now, we need to go back within and say, as a society, what are we made of? Who are we made of? Who are we? And the leaders are us. They are not those people out there, right? And we meet each other at a point of where we are. We come from different spaces, from different spheres. As you can see, we are sitting here on this website, on this seminar, and we're from different cities, different countries in the world. And those of us who are fortunate enough to live in different spaces, you know, personally, it kind of gave me a view to start to look at myself, because I locate myself in South Africa and I locate myself where I live in Switzerland, and I'm like, who am I in this space? And I experience myself differently. I see the life differently. What works in Switzerland? Why is Switzerland working so perfectly? Why can't things work perfectly here? But then again, why is there no Ubuntu in the sense of me feeling communal when I'm in Switzerland? Why do I feel communal here at home? So it's different. There are differences, and we need to kind of find a space of, where do we first start? What is that fundamental? And for me, I preach love wherever I go. I just believe that the fundamental root of what brings us as human beings is love.
Beautiful.
Thank
And
you,
with
Dolores.
love comes a sense of accountability, and it's not sentimental love. It's the hardest thing to actually enact.
Oh, yeah.
It really
Yes,
is the
please.
hardest thing to enact. So I want to
Absolutely.
just refer to a story of one of, I don't know if Colleen is in here. She might be, but in the group that I was running yesterday, Colleen talked about, and I hope I get the story right, but I'm having poetic license. In having the water or the electricity out, something was turned off. I think electricity was turned off, and it interrupted a whole lot of things. And the person from the municipality, from the city, came to speak to her. And in an earlier stage, she would have gone out being so of her own maturity. Colleen, are you here? I'm talking for you. Please forgive me that I'm talking for you in your story. And what was different because of the work that she has done as a leader is that she didn't get irritated. She was able to see the projections and the irritations and the brusqueness of the worker, but appreciate that this was a human being going about a job that he was finding difficult. And how could she be different in relationship to him? So that is not a formal position. That is using our leadership positions and our own development, starting with self, into the space of the street or our own interactions with people. It starts with us. Shanaaz, would you like to?
So if I can just jump in here quickly,
Yes.
the chat has been quite active. So I just wanted to bring some of
Yay.
these voices in that also touch on what you've been bringing up and what Dolores said about, what is our makeup? What are we made of, right? So Kevin, he asked the question of, do the leaders listen to the community on the ground? There's too much top down. We need bottom up and inside out. And to understand that everyone has something to offer. Also, Dumi had spoken about, to increase chances of effectiveness, leaders need to be more fully present and in touch with the majority of the people in their jurisdiction. So again, this concept of hearing more deeply from people. So I was curious as well that because you are both people who've worked intimately with leaders, do you find that there is an appetite to hear from the people directly? Is there a curiosity within them? And is there even an openness to be responsive to those needs and that they hear from the people?
Let me go there with you, Ndoni. I feel, provoked and evoked by what I see about listening and hearing. I think the current context, whether locally or globally, requires for a different kind of hearing and a different kind of listening. I think our leaders are just listening to download. To tell people what they already hear and their version of the story and their read on the reality. And we've seen that the downloading and the debating ways of hearing and listening don't work, right? To wanting to engage stakeholders at a very superficial level, to tick some boxes, to drive compliance, but there's no dialogue. There's no real presencing where a leader comes, making themselves humble and available to listen without an agenda, where there's real dialogue and there's a skill, right? It's a practice. And it's a condition of the inner work. Am I available to hear the uncomfortable truths without defending, without saying, I have no answer? I don't know. I don't even know how to ask the right questions here, and allow the community's wisdom to guide where things need to go and how things are to solve. We don't have a poverty of solutions and of insight. We have a poverty of leaders using their love and their power in ways to allow for solutions to be demonstrated from unusual spaces and places.
Oh, thank you for that addition, Shanaaz. That's really powerful. I see your hand is up, Ferial. I'm going to come to you. I just want to let you know that I see there's a lot coming through in the chat, and I'm so glad that people have so much to offer to this. We're going to be going into a period of just questions and open reflections. Before that, I would like you, Paddy, to just break down that leadership maturity framework a bit before we go deeper into the questions. But I'll take you first, Ferial. Your hand is up.
Yes, beautifully said, Shanaaz. I just want to pick up from what you've said, in that I've had the privilege now over the last little while to be sitting in on much of Paddy's trainings that she's doing for many different types of leaders. And it's pretty interesting and exciting, because what you've just talked about now, Shanaaz, is the fact that when they're making themselves available to listen, not to hear, but to listen for the reasons that you've just given, Shanaaz, we're discovering in relationship with these leaders is because they are having to operate from earlier levels of consciousness that still really brings in so many of their own shadows that they not had space to address, so many of the things that just as a normal human being, we need this space to integrate so that we move to our, kind of more higher levels of availability and consciousness. And that is why they cannot access it, even when they really want to. So they get into the, I want to listen, but I'm hearing through all of those lenses, and I'm still having to, tick boxes. I'm having to, be ready for the next polling that's happening because I want to keep my, my role. And there's just all of that pressures that are coming for them, and they don't have the tools to navigate that complexity. So we have the results we have. Thank you, Paddy.
Thank you. They don't have the tools. I see here, Paddy, you added, and if the leader's own leadership maturity is fixated in ego, self that is inflated or scared, they cannot listen well. They're not available for that higher level of action. So, Paddy, maybe this is a good time to just delve a little bit deeper into leadership maturity as a framework.
I am going to share something because we are finding this incredibly useful and important, and it's becoming more and more important as we working with it. Sorry, I should have. There's just this whole being of, as a human community, we're facing this constellation of planetary crisis. It's unparalleled in many ways, and in most cases we've been disturbed. We are being disturbed, and AI is disturbing us as well. And the challenge with AI is that it's changing so much that even as it comes online and we're working with it, it's increasing the complexity. It's not making it easier. It's making the pace of things even more extreme, because content is being downloaded so fast, and to keep up with that there's no space for reflection, there's no spaciousness in the timing. So this thing of everything is urgent and we have to go slowly is a bit of a mantra of mine at the moment. And if we're asking, what does it mean to utilize the full spectrum of leadership potential? That is an integral question, and it is a developmental question, because we enter just through our natural space of being a leader. We are entering in an early developmental space as a young leader that needs nurturing, and it needs companionship, and it needs guidance so that we can mature into a later leadership capacity. The expectations need to match the stage and the level of where we are working. So working at the 4 domains of leadership experience, those are the systems, culture and strategic visioning, the individual leadership roles, and the mindsets of leaders. And paradoxically, a leader's inner world and their world outside and the mindsets are a direct impact of the quality of relationships in the team, to the systems, to the environment, to the processes, the culture, the roles. Likewise, they impact who we are inside and our own inner resources. So where are the resources when we're talking about resources? Are we talking about resources that are outside of there, or are we talking about resourcing the inner world, our heart? Can our heart just listen and open a little bit more? Can we somatically take a breath and slow ourselves down? Can our mind engage at a slower pace where reflection, where we can sit under the tree, where we can be on the ground of Mother Earth and feel the grass coming up? So when we're working through these levels, these developmental stages, it's like a tree and the roots of it that we need to be growing and need to realize that this is not something we can be catapulted in, but it is a process. It is not an act, it's not a tool. I'm moving those out. And the kind of vertical frameworks of these stages where we're working through various stages that have been, of course, this is a construct. It's not the entire answer. But if we understand where we are, and every stage is beautiful, there is nothing that is less than the other stage, except the capacity to work with complexity. So in the earlier stage, if leaders are at the stage, and so many leaders are at the expert level, but they're working with their expertise and their skills and have solutions for some of the most incredible challenges in our cities, but don't yet have the later stage capacity to manage the conversations of ambiguity, to be introspective, to get out of the way, and to do the listening. And to be able to do that, we have to hold in the gut and the heart and the head all together. And part of accelerating deliberate development is a deliberate practice. And that's what we want to add in the GMA. That's what the work I've been doing is this deliberate practice that our leaders and our coaches kind of work with, in working with consciously attending to these things, not in an unconscious way, because if we make it conscious, we make it objective and we can then work with it. If it is sitting inside of us, it's a mush. So until we have that's why models and frames are useful, but they're not the only answer. So leading in complexity, we need to be fit for purpose. And there is a diversity of the stages of leadership within that system. And the interpersonal gap is massive. You know, how do we bridge those gaps? So this training is a school, and I've heard Earth being referred to as a school. We're in our journey on Earth as a school. Can we all enter the school, and can we embrace this learning that we need to do? So when we're working with the leadership journeys, there is time in an organization for the stage of the expert that focuses on the technical competence. There's a time for the achiever to manage and drive teams forward into something. And there's time for the visionary innovator to come in and have that space. But is leadership thought about like this? I don't think so. Because each of these capacities require, at the early stage, what my drive is to be secure. What my drive is at the next stage is to belong and to be part of something. What my drive is in the next stage is to be knowledgeable. What my drive is to be effective. Then flexible, I can kind of move around. I can dance a little bit. And I can integrate all these things that have come before me and are yet to come and are out in the horizontal. So it's a 360 capacity. And being aware is jolly difficult. And to simply be, well, not many organizations say, please just come and be in my organization. So these are usually from the outside who are holding spaces. And this journey of integrating the upsides of every stage and the downsides is the role of leadership. And this is what we are so motivated to help intensify and kind of create the places where our leaders in the GMA are able, on the City Leaders Program, to be able to start thinking about these capacities and start on their journey of development around it, so that as they are opening their inner capacity, so they are opening the relational teamwork and the strategies to be there, so they're opening how these get put into systems and processes and lived, and how we take action for that to become real.
Thanks, Paddy.
Questions?
Did I cut you off or had you wrapped up? Okay.
No,
Yes.
questions.
I wanted to add that Lauren resonates very much with what you were saying. She also adds that, you know, politics is at an ego level, but leadership should be at a higher self level. The most powerful question that a leader can ask is, who is the leader or person I want to be? Too often leaders operate at the level of doing, not being, goals instead of purpose. So the development that needs to take place is, as you say, vertical development for mature leadership. That's a great comment. Thank you for that, Lauren. So Paddy's given us so much there, but I would love to open it up to let you reflect on anything that you've heard from Shanaaz and from Paddy this evening. But I'd also like to pose a specific question as well. And we've talked about the weight that leaders carry in, you know, executing their various roles, meeting the challenges that are in front of them. But I think, you know, even if we're just coming to this conversation as citizens, we're all carrying a weight of some kind, right? So I would like you to reflect on what is the weight that you are currently carrying as a citizen of the city that you live in, or what is the weight that you're carrying as somebody who works within the systems of city governance or leadership, or works alongside the city? What is the weight that you feel yourself carrying? If you can add that to the chat, or raise your hand, or reflect on anything that you've heard so far this evening. Delphine, please go ahead. We'll take Delphine and then Aarti.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you very much, Paddy and Ronnie and Shanaaz, for holding such a beautiful space of exploration. I would like to just highlight what makes us, what is at the center of being human is really relating. It's relating to each other. It's being in relationship. And when I work with leaders that are so out there juggling so many balls, there's no availability for relating. And that's how we really lose touch with each other, with ourselves, with the environment. So one core place, I think, where we as coaches really have a role to play is hosting a relational space. So that the leaders have a moment to co-regulate with us as coaches. And to really bring themselves towards themselves so that they can go out into the world and bring that relational quality into the organizations they work with. And what that requires of us as coaches is really to have our instrument, our body as instrument available to co-regulate. And that requires practice for us to really regulate ourselves, be regulated when stepping into a conversation, so that we can bring that human spark of relating into the world. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Delphine, touching on the power of our ability to influence one another through co-regulation. I'm going to come to you, Aarti and Nirala. I see your hands. I just want to read. Isabel says, even though I do not live in a city, I live in a remote area with villages, and the same qualities we need for leaders in cities are the same we need in villages and smaller towns. This has been incredible to listen to. My PhD work in leadership development is very much about the inner dimension, particularly how these resonate with leaders who deal with emerging economies' complexity. Thank you so much for that, Isabel. Aarti, I know you had a hand, and then I'll come to you, Nirala, as well. Aarti.
All right. Thank you, Donnie. And Paddy and Shanaaz, it has been such a wonderful sensation to listen to things that Ferial knows I've been working on. And this is such great resonance because I've literally worked from multi-stakeholder district level evidence collection exercises in terms of understanding the behavior of citizens and how that translates into district level trends and how one can make an intervention from a behavioral perspective. That's something that I've been doing. But when I look at India, that's where I'm from, the complexities are of a very different nature. And I think every geography has that challenge. So when we're looking at our leaders, and you rightly said that, Paddy, who are these people? I think, Donnie, you said that. Who are these leaders, if not people from amongst us, from our kind of families? The whole idea of balancing politics with civic provisioning and keeping it human-centered is completely missing as an area of attention when we look at how leaders are conditioned, what kind of education and induction procedures they go through to become a part of the government and exercise those rights. I recently did a podcast on the workings of UN, and I literally spoke about from the League of Nations and how UN was formed. So when you look at the whole idea of the missing philosopher king or the missing philosopher ruler, we will always have systems that already come with a shelf life, and they're not integrated into the natural cultural processes of human collection, which is what we call cities. So I think working on these aspects of how do we help leaders be inspired to be inspiring, because it's like the ant colony, right? The main ant never works, but it's holding the group in such a way that the rest of the ants are inspired to pull that dead lizard off the pot. If some of you have watched that video, it's a very interesting video of how ants together pull food. So I think what we lack today, yes, you're right, we don't have less of solutions around us. We're smart people. We can think of solutions. We've lived far too long to not have solutions, but it is the intention. It is that understanding that as a leader, you have to be inspiring enough. So I think somewhere we need to embed that into our thinking process and doing process, and finally when we go live with the whole program. So that's something that came up for me. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Aarti, for sharing. Nirala, I am coming to you, but someone just reminded me that Ronnie has had his hand up since earlier on, since I think just before we'd started. So Ronnie, can I bring you in now? I know you've been really patient, and you just hang on, we're going to come to you as well, Nirala. Ronnie?
Yes,
Hi, Ronnie.
thank you so much, Miss. I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear.
We can hear
So
you.
thank
Thanks,
you so
Ronnie.
much. Awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Donna, and our two main speakers, Dr. Paddy and Shanaaz. For me, it's really been a privilege. I've picked quite a lot from the two of you. And when you asked us about the cities we come from at the beginning, my city in this case is going to be the industry. I come from the industry. I believe I was born to serve in, and where I've actually achieved most of what I have today, and that is the aviation industry. I believe in two things. I believe in awareness and total mind transformation. The biggest, I think for me, the biggest and most important attribute any leader should have is about awareness. That awareness cuts deeper into knowing who they are, and that's their purpose. And this speaks to all of us, in this meeting today, without knowing what exactly, you're meant to, you're born to be. It's quite very hard for you to have, any conversation with people who you actually want to understand what you're trying to, to speak out there. Secondly, it's a total mind transformation. We have a very big problem in Africa of a very traditional way. And this can only be changed by, doing quite a number of things. One of them is, traveling to different countries. South Africans travel to other countries to know what really happens there, and other countries do the same. Otherwise, if you live in one country for, all your life, you start thinking all that exists is what you have seen since you're born, and leaves quite a gap in your mind to you and sensible way. And sorry to use this example. The reason I'm saying this is, in the day and age we're living in right now, we shouldn't be talking about issues like, fellow Africans killing fellow Africans in another country. That shouldn't really happen in 2026. Many, many years ago, after, people, very prominent leaders like Nelson Mandela, sacrificed all that they had to do to make the countries what they are today. Thirdly, I'm a reader of history, and history is so important in that without knowing where we come from, it is very hard for us to even talk about the future that we want to lead. As leaders, it becomes very, very useless. Get to know the cities that we're talking about. What is their history like? For this, I'll use an example of Dubai. When you go to Dubai, Dubai has two sides. There's the new Dubai and there's the old Dubai. All tourists who have gone to the United Arab Emirates, all they have to do is to stand at the mirror and look at both sides. They will appreciate what the leaders have done. They will appreciate where the country has come from, and they will appreciate where the country is going. That is pure leadership in its most raw form. Then thirdly, I'm going to talk about the three most prominent airlines Africa, has had. I believe all of us here have taken flights before, and we do understand partly how the aviation industry operates. 20 years ago, the biggest airline in Africa was South African Airways, and they have a slogan that says, "A better way to fly." 15 years ago, Kenya Airways became the first because of what they were actually doing to try and transform, to try and bring into Africa what they called the pride of Africa. But 50 years ago, Ethiopian Airlines was nothing, absolutely nothing. Today, as we speak, Ethiopian Airlines is the king of the African aviation jungle, and their slogan reads, "The new spirit of Africa." Let me tell you a simple story. Ethiopia is one airline that operates on visions. It doesn't operate on feelings, not fantasies, on visions. 10 years ago, they had a vision to be the Africa's biggest airline with the biggest fleet ever seen in Africa. Right now, as I speak, they have 197 planes in their fleet, more than even some airlines in Europe. All that is because they wrote a vision down. And I'm a believer of God. Allow me to share this. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 1-3 says, "Write the vision down and give it a definite time for it to happen in the future." When you write a vision down as a leader, whether it's in your office, whether it's in your bedroom, you're already creating a mantra in your mind. You're creating energies around it. Whoever comes to your company or to your organization, any client will read it first, and straight away their mind is going to be propelled and channeled in a way that you want them to understand. So when you look at very, very big airlines right now, like Ethiopian Airlines, look at where they came from. 50 years ago, they were nothing. 50 years ago, Dubai was a desert. Right now, Dubai has one of the strongest passports in this world. That's, we can talk about. Getting to live in Dubai is a dream for so many, but you can't get it because they have created value. And where there's value, there's respect. And where there's respect, there's trust and there's authenticity. So for me, leadership, one is we need to change how we think. That is one. But we also need to equip ourselves with the kind of awareness that we need as leaders. Again, my example is Ethiopian Airlines. Look at how they operate. There's no destination in Africa they don't fly. As a matter of fact, Ethiopian Airlines makes more profit every 6 months, more than most airlines in Europe and the US combined. All that is because they understood a vision, they spoke to themselves, and they were very diligent and serious about where they want to go. The biggest export of that country is aviation, not tourism. South Africa's biggest export is tourism, nothing else. So if you kill tourism,
Ronnie, I'm sorry, I just have to jump in. Thank you so much for your contribution and everything you added. We've just got so many people who want to contribute to the conversation. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
And something that you touched on that's really important as well is when you have leadership or leaders that don't have much to offer in the moment, that's when it becomes really easy to pit people against each other or to scapegoat. So this is why the leadership maturity that we're discussing is so important to build that inner capacity. Just to touch again on some reflections from the chat, Dan says, this has helped me so much. Thanks for so much holistic wisdom. I've been attempting to work with the city to create a new path direct to a train station in Toronto, Canada, to help the community. So it's been an interesting journey so far. He added a petition that the local community is passing around so we can get an idea. Kevin says, I personally find that we're still stuck in old ways of thinking. Einstein said something about we cannot change with old ways of thinking. Is the world moving to higher thinking? And it will eventually. And Nirala, maybe I'll just bring you in here. Sorry, I was muted. Nirala, I'd like to bring you in here, and then I'd like to bring Shanaaz and Paddy in for a final reflection before we throw to Ferial. Go ahead, Nirala.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll be brief. So greetings to everybody, and thank you for the invitation to this very inspiring and much needed discussion. So I just want to say that if we're looking at cities, we need countries. And how do we head the countries to be at the top leadership to ensure that we're sustainable and bring about the change? So much of what you speak about as the panel today resonates very deeply with me, because I served as the head of leadership at SARS for a number of years. And we all know that it's in the public domain, the Nugent Commission, and the turnaround strategy that Commissioner Edward Kieswetter and the leadership team made. And that was so central to what you're saying, because we developed a leadership model that focuses on stewardship, bequeathing something greater than you inherited, on service obsession, on care and growth of emerging leaders, and just making the higher purpose of what we serve for countries. So very much for countries and then for cities. So very much of what you're saying, Dr. Paddy, from the inside out approach, but what is happening on the outside that requires us to change from the inside? And what are the behavioral indicators that we can measure? Because that matters most. So thank you. That was insightful. And I completely agree with everything that was said. It's the inside out approach. And what is the world needing from us? Thank you.
And just to come, I'm jumping
go ahead,
in.
Paddy. No, please go ahead. Just briefly,
you
and
can
then we'll
see I'm
wrap up.
passionate about this. I'm really passionate about this. The you know, when we have too many experts wanting to measure and get the results from the measurements of statistics, and we lose the connection to love, Dolores, and we lose the connection to humanity, humaneness, Dumi, to humaning together. When we lose connection with our purpose, and Ronnie, I loved the vision. If there is a vision, and I think the GMA has a vision, it has a vision of which Ferial will chat to, but that vision brings us together. And in the vision, if that is held tightly, and Nirala, what you said with the stewardship, we are stewards here. We are not owners of spaces. We are stewards. We need to be in relationship with nature, with earth, with everything that feeds us. We're so arrogant. We are so arrogant in our importance. When nature, we are just part of nature. We're not supreme, but we treat it as such. So, you know, when we ravage the very thing that created us or gives us energy and sustainability, then we're in danger. And I know everyone here is in that space of when we're in relationship with each other and to the earth, and when we recognize that all of us are on a journey through these different stages as we are in the school of earth, someone has to hold the vision so that they can inspire and create that everybody moves towards that vision. And I guess that's the hence of the ducks flying in that V. There is someone who's always holding the front end of we're going to move towards something, and hopefully that something is better than what we have now. I love everybody's contribution. Love, love, love it.
Thank you for
Shanaaz.
that final reflection. Paddy. Before I bring you in, Shanaaz, I'd just like to invite you, because we are running short of time, I'd invite you to leave your final reflections on this last question in the chat. And you can add those as Shanaaz is wrapping up and as we throw to Ferial. But I'd like to leave you with this question. After everything that you've heard this evening, what's one thing that you heard today that you want to carry into your work in the coming week? What is something that you heard today that you're going to be taking with you back into your work, back into the communities? So as you reflect on what is one thing that you heard that you're going to carry with you, I'd like to bring Shanaaz in for her final reflection after all of the contributions for everyone in the group, everything that has emerged. Is there a final sort of wrapping up thought that you'd like to leave us with? And then we'll take it to Ferial. Shanaaz.
Doni and everyone in the room, thank you for the privilege of listening and being in conversation. I think the big defining tension that's going to test our leadership in cities is how do we hold connection, engagement, and the capacity for productive conflict. So loved, there's so much on offer. And yeah, I'm going to yield so that you can do what you need to do with a final piece. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shanaaz. And I see some coming from you already. What are you taking? Leaders. That was a phrase that is going to stick with me. Transformational leadership in cities starts with me. We're all implicated in this work. To write down the vision, yes, and time. Humble service with love. Absolutely. Kevin says, also, it's good to look at other parts of the world models that are working well. But I think we must understand each community is unique and adjust for that community, and the community must take ownership. And then Ronnie says he's leaving with the power of vision. Absolutely. So with those thoughts and those reflections, and please keep them coming, you're welcome, I'm going to turn it over to Ferial to just give us some more information and details about the Global Mayors Academy and the program itself. Ferial?
Thank you so much, Ndoni. It's been really beautiful listening to the conversation, looking at the chat, and it's the reason we created the Global Mayors Academy. I, of course, get to work very closely with Dr. Paddy Pampallis, also Shanaaz and Ndoni, and a host of incredible human beings on this planet. And yet, my mantra always is, are we embodying this stuff we are talking about? And what I mean by this is I put myself, so I'm about to share my screen, and you're going to see the whole lots of tabs that are open, because yes, I am a busy leader like most of you here, but if I do not, so the responsibility here is not on, will my city change, or my country change, or look, someone mentioned in here, that's us. We are the leaders. So that responsibility, unfortunately, until such time that more of civilization makes the shift, the responsibility is going to have to be on us. So I put myself through the paces. Even this morning, I was in a course and the messages are coming in and my team wants stuff from me, but I'm like, nope, I'm staying the course. And I'm taking this moment to invest into my inner development, because this is going to determine the kind of leader that I will be and that I am and that I'm becoming. The work never ends for me. Right? It is a continuous development of myself. And so with that, I would say, someone said, write down that vision. Well, we did. We said, we're here to serve the 10,000 cities on our beautiful blue planet. Right? And how will we do that? We will do that by inspiring, interconnecting, and empowering 1 million leaders of positive change on our planet. And that's you. That's me. Right? So, Kevin, how do we move to new ways of thinking? We make a decision to invest in our own development full stop. And when that happens, you start carrying a frequency wherever you are. You start opening spaces. You start operating as a very, very, very different leader. Because the point is, there are things that now drive you that no longer drive you. It's no longer the shadows making the decisions. It's no longer the complexity and all the demands upon you. Now you can start to operate from a much deeper space within yourself to become. I think there will come a time, and I hope there will come a time, that we don't need leaders, because we all will be leading our own, path forward. But until that day arrives, we're going to need examples of people, of courageous ones willing to take that step. So how can you get involved with this Global Mayors Academy we've just been talking about, and what you see on our little backgrounds over there? So the first way is, I'm going to share my screen just a little bit for you so that you could just see our wonderful website over here, right? And there's a little button there that says reserve your place. Well, that's where you can start. Now there are many other ways, but that's one of the ways you can start. You can say, I'm going to reserve my place because I'm the kind of leader courageous enough to say, I am willing to invest into my own multidimensional development. Number one. Or you might know someone else that you think this would really be a powerful, program for. Secondly, you could join as an ambassador for the GMA. And that means you go and tell others, right? Share the love we talked about earlier. And it is love, because if we love our world, then we're going to say, we want to do this. We want to invest. We know we need to. And then there is also, just in any other way that you see, we have faculty. You see some of them here with the little blue things behind them. We have so many people involved, about 70 people now, many of them connected and co-founders of Living Cities Earth, which is the organization that has really empowered what we are doing, and whom I am the CEO for, in addition to the Global Mayors Academy. And we are just responding to, I think, at this moment, what we felt as leaders. So I'm going to pop into the chat some of my just contact details, and please get in touch, and I will, pass a lot of this on to my team, and where I can respond myself, I will, and just, connect you in the ways that you feel right now drawn into that connection. So as I said, it might be in any one of the ways that I've just described to you. So there you go. I've just popped all of that into the chat for you. And then finally, there's an opportunity, these chats, if you've enjoyed this time with us, we decided that this was so necessary for us to have this space to talk about these things. So we're going to be hosting every few days, 10 days, 2 weeks. So the next one is coming up on the 28th of May. It's called, the title is, What If AI is Not a Threat, but an Invitation for Us to Evolve? Now, we're going to be joined by, myself and Ndoni will be hosting that chat. We're going to be joined by Dr. Annalou Smitsman. She's an award-winning futurist, system scientist, and evolutionary change architect. And she's done wonderful body of work that we're going to be, bringing into that. We've also got Dr. Pavel Luksha. He's going to be talking about futures, strategy, systems innovation, education, transformation, pioneering, and a whole host of other things, right? So this conversation will not be a conversation about AI hype or fear, but an exploration of whether AI represents not just a technological revolution, because look, we can't get away from it, it's here, but a developmental threshold for us when we do that inner work. How will we use it as a tool that advances, does not take us back 10 steps, right? Like perhaps at some point fire, agriculture, and a number of other technologies did. So I hope I will see you there, because this is our next threshold to evolve as leaders in our city. Thank you so much. It's been inspiring being here with each of you.
Thank you so much, Ferial. And I think it's good to end with some of your voices in the chat. David says, I realized I cannot control the ocean, so I learned to read the currents and remain anchored in the storm and help to set a new path to a new way. Love that. So beautifully put. Thank you, David. Warren says, so many reflections and takeaways. What is the small contribution we can start with in our own capacity to support leadership? With love comes accountability and humility. The power of what all changes once the vision is brought out physically into the tangible. So much focus on the top down and so much space for supporting development of leadership capacity from the bottom up. Kevin says he's taking the fact that change starts with me. Tandega says we are but custodians, which translates to huge responsibility and consistently holding the space. So true. Colleen says that change, transformation starts with me, within me, flows from me and comes back to me and then through me, a continuous flow. Beautifully put. So thank you so much. I'm so glad we were able to hold our integrity with time. I see your hand, Anton. As Ferial has mentioned, the next webinar and coming together will be on the 28th of May. Please try and make it if you're able to, but thank you for making the time today and your contributions. And Anton, before you leave, we all leave, what would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ndoni, Paddy, Shanaaz, and Ferial for sharing for this conversation and for all of you who joined this. And yeah, I'm leading a brand development of our new, we would like to say, project of Global Mayors Academy. And thank you for joining us. We are still on the development. And while you registered, we have your emails, and very soon we will share with you a space where we can continue our conversations in between of this meeting. So keep updated, and we will share in your emails some interesting materials after this meeting, kind of presentations, etc. And we will see you soon in some area where we can continue our conversation. Thank you, everybody. And we have a tradition in our meeting, like at the end, switch on your mics, cameras if you can, and we can share our gratitude and blessings to our speakers and to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
It was really
joining.
great seeing all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Спасибо, друзья.
Thank you.
Это было
Thank you.
здорово.
See you.
Hello,
Вы мои
and all the
хорошие.
best.
Пока.
Thank you, Pandega.
Beautiful.
I
Thank
see you,
you.
Anne-Marie.
Cheers,
Thank
everybody.
you, David.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Hi, David.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Hi, Rich.
Lauren.
Bye, Anna-Marie.
Hi, Reg.
Liv.
Colleen. Twice today.
Thanks for joining, Reg. Bye. Bye, Bernie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Anne-Marie.
Ellen, Nanta, fabulous to see you.
Ellen Wanda.
Veronique.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Beautiful. Okay.
Thanks, Veronique. I see that the comment that Veronique